To start, I'd like to invite Ev Williams up on stage. Nice to see you. To start, I want to ask you a broad question about whether the internet has been good for content. You've seen it from many different angles, and I think in today's climate, you could kind of argue maybe a little bit both sides, but where would you stand on that?
It's an interesting way to phrase the question because what is content? I think the internet has been amazing for people. And there's more great knowledge, information, ideas out in the world than ever before by orders of magnitude. And generally, they're free and instantly accessible. And so for those who want to tap into that, it's amazing. It's also amazing, obviously, for people who want to put ideas out there. And that opportunity was never available like this today. And that's what originally got me excited about the internet 20 years ago. And especially as a farm boy from Nebraska who never had access to that many great teachers, mentors, or anything, the idea that you could tap the world's brains through this computer screen was tremendously exciting to me. And my assumption at the time was it would just make us all a lot smarter and society would function a lot better. That's the part I don't know if it's true. So it turns out it's a little bit more complicated than just getting the information out there.
Why? Was there some experience you had that made you maybe shift that thinking?
It's just a gradual realization. I mean, look at our any situation we're at today. I mean, I think in many ways, as a society, we're not smarter. Individuals can be if they try to be, but the feedback loops of media have caused really detrimental effects, I think, for our society and discourse and the general public, and for people who want to tell stories, do real journalism, etc. I think it's not as good of an environment as it was before.
Why is that?
It's basically because of, I always go back to feedback loops. What are the incentives? What gets attention? And how money is a big part of that, obviously. And the feedback loops we've had on the web for the last 20 years is if you maximize people viewing and number of views, which is a very shallow one-dimensional metric, then that's how you win. And anytime you optimize for one-dimensional metric, then you have very distorted effects. And so, and it's not really good for everybody. Obviously, a lot of that is because of advertising. It's not just because of advertising, I think. But because advertising has been the main driver and the main goal of people on the professional side putting information out there, and it's also been the feedback loops. Obviously, a huge part of that now is what the social feeds drive attention to, and that's what people optimize for. And that's a very shallow way to measure what's important. And I don't remember who to give credit to for this, but one of the best descriptions I ever saw was if you're driving down the road and you see a car crash, and you look at it, that doesn't mean you want to see more car crashes. And that's essentially what a lot of our feeds and internet shows. Oh, you like that? Well, more of that.
Yeah. So how does that affect Medium and its current strategy?
Well, that's essentially why I chose to start Medium a few years ago, because I thought there was a need and an opportunity to build a platform that had that was a great place for anyone who wanted to share stories and ideas of substance, and that also had built-in distribution and feedback. So essentially, it was playing off lessons that I had learned and observed from the last couple decades of the internet, and which I didn't realize were really reinforced when I was working on Twitter, and I think everyone sort of learned that networks are the thing for the internet. When we started Blogger and most blogging platforms, which have the goal of helping people put their thoughts out there, that was in the 90s, early 2000s, we didn't really understand that networks that had these built-in feedback loops were the key to getting critical mass and to and growth. So it was more of a software, a tool approach. So we help people publish websites.
And then nothing happened. Like,
And then and it's like, okay, I have a website, and it's on a network, which is the web, but there wasn't any network effect to Blogger, for instance, or for other publishing tools. And then we saw that was the strategy with social media, obviously, but really any other major property on the internet is a marketplace or a network that has network effects. And so it seemed inevitable that all content would move to networks as the primary distribution vehicle. And that would be if you could build one of those that had a critical mass and had feedback loops that reinforced thoughtfulness, quality, other aspects that besides just popularity, then you could nudge things in the right direction.
And have you been able to do that at Medium, and how do you do that? It seems challenging.
It's a big project.
Yeah.
It's a big project. I'm very excited about where we're at with that. Momentum is definitely building. I think we've created a place which has become the default for a lot, especially for smart individuals who have something to share. And it makes a hell of a lot more sense to publish on Medium for most people than to set up a website. Whether or not you're doing it casually or you're doing it semi-seriously, tapping into a network, having the tools that are best in class and upgraded all the time, and you don't have to worry about that. But more importantly, tapping into a network where you can actually build an audience and get that feedback that's working, and it's growing. And now we're focusing on the bigger challenges, which is the more professional side, which of course requires people getting paid for doing it as well.
And so talk a bit about what you're doing there. I know you've announced some new things.
Yeah,
products.
so in a few months ago, we decided, I think much like you did, that advertising wasn't sufficient and it wasn't going to support quality content, especially the written word. Advertising on the web it's just a crappy advertising format, and it doesn't work, and it doesn't pay the bills, and that's not exactly a news flash, but I think lots of people, for lack of some alternative, although you and others are proving there is an alternative, are just chasing that. And the key is, well, if we get more and more eyeballs on it and lower the cost of how much to create it, then we can make the math work. But it's just, in many ways, a race to the bottom. I don't think advertising is going away, and I don't think it's not part of the equation for many publishers, but just putting an ad on a page and trying to get lots of people to view that page is not going to pay for quality content for the most part. And that the math seems clear on that. So when we started focusing on how to make publishing sustainable and profitable, we said, well, the history of media, most quality content has either been paid for direct by consumers or a combination. I mean, magazines, except for your free ad-driven ones, which weren't the best, were always subscription and advertising driven, as is a lot of television. And so the whole idea that media that was advertising only driven could be high quality has not really been proven historically, even though
we forgot that in the digital age for some reason. But
for a moment there, we forgot about that, which may have been a huge mistake, as someone wrote this week. But I think it will correct. And so what we decided to do, we launched an advertising product, and we launched a subscription product that both are in beta. And they're nascent efforts, but we think both are probably important. Our advertising product is entirely native to Medium, so it's sort of like our version of promoted tweets. So everybody who's an advertiser on Medium is a publisher on Medium, and companies use Medium to publish and do content marketing just like publishers use Medium to publish, and individuals use Medium because it's a great publishing platform. And one option for them is to buy more distribution to those stories. So for as a user experience, it's great because you know that even though the story is promoted, it's on the same platform. And for an advertiser, you know that the readers are likely to be more engaged. And we charge for that on not based on views, but based on the time spent reading. And so that seems promising. And as a subscription, we have a handful of publications that are using the subscription product, which we call membership, because it lets the publisher decide
where on the spectrum between patronage and paywall they want to be. And so for some of them, it's really about community, and it's about having members who just really want to support them and be part of something. So the way our membership product works is publishers can paywall 100%, 10%, 0% of the content they're publishing, and they can decide what to charge for that. And so we're going to make both of those products more robust over time and explore other ideas as well.
Awesome. Another idea you guys have gone back and forth on a bit is whether you want to own content or not. You bought Matter, had the creative back channel before you sold it to Condé Nast. So walk us through that thinking, because I think it speaks to the broader question now: do tech companies need to own content or not?
Right. Yeah. So we got into being a publisher on our own platform mostly to learn and to help seed the platform. We didn't really go through a process of saying, will that be a major part of our business? We early on created a content and editorial team, really whose job it was to solicit and give support to content creators at the high end. And this is not dissimilar from what most major content platforms do. They have a VIP team who works with people, and we did this at Twitter, YouTube does this. And we started there, and we thought that was really important for a new platform, because as much as the functionality defines what happens on platform, the early usage defines what's happened, defines what the brand is and how people perceive it. So we wanted to really just not open the doors and say, whatever shows up is fine. And that worked, actually, and that established Medium as a legitimate place to publish, and there's lots of good stuff. And then that same team said, well, what's the next level? And that was mostly what you could consider the UGC layer of content, which is strong and thriving. And then that's when we started saying, well, what is the professional layer, and what does that look like? And what's the tool set we need, and can we establish Medium also as that? So we didn't really know at first what that looked like, but we had people who came from magazines, and we have this team in New York who's really great at that. And so we said, well, you guys just do it. Let's just do it and see what it looks like. And we hired Stephen Levy and some others, and we created a few properties. And we learned a lot from that, to the point where we said, okay, let's get into this business, and let's be a platform for other professional publishers. And let's just simplify and not try to do both. And so that's essentially where we went with that.
Was doing both complicated? I mean,
it was what I underestimated, to tell you the truth, was the complexity of it's two different cultures, as you probably know. But there aren't a lot of companies that successfully merge those two companies. There's some. Netflix is obviously very impressive in doing both of those. Maybe at a later stage, if we were more mature, we could do that. But I think as a startup, it just didn't make sense. And it's not really our intent. It's not our DNA. It's not my DNA. Actually, Matter, which is one of our biggest publications, we kind of spun off, and it's a media company. It's co-founded by me and a couple, including the editor of that. And that's exciting and fun, but it's sort of a side project for me. And they're doing stuff off Medium.
Yeah. It's a good lesson maybe for AT&T, which looks like it might be about to buy Time Warner, which, according to the rumors today. But again, I think we are going to see more tech and content. Why do you think? I mean, is it because do tech platforms risk being dumb pipes, or how do they avoid kind of that?
I don't know. I don't think we risk that. I think what we can do is allow content creators to really focus on what they're good at, and especially on the small to mid-size publishers who don't, it's very rare to have world-class tech team in a media company, just as rare to have a world-class media team in a tech company. And so if we can work together, I think we can find the way that we both thrive, and that's how many businesses have worked over time. So we're excited about that path. For other tech companies, there's this term I just learned recently, stack fallacy, which makes you think it was in a Medium article I read this. Good stuff on there, by the way. This idea that a lot of tech companies get the idea that building something up the stack if they build something at this layer, building the things on top are easy. And turns out that's not true. And so there's a lot of history of people with platforms failing to build apps, or I think this is similar to us. We're, I think, the best people to create a content platform. We're not the best people to create content.
So is Twitter a tech or media company, do you think?
I think that's a distinction that I would say is misunderstood, because it's based on the old world where tech was a vertical and media was a vertical and finance was a vertical and fashion was a vertical. And now tech, there is some vertical to it, but it's more horizontal.
Yeah,
And so I think it's the wrong distinction. So it's both. It's in the media business, as is Facebook and Google and Medium. And so it's both. Where does it create most of their value? They create their value by creating technology. And there's basically no one in that company who comes from the media mindset, but they're definitely in the media business.
I have to ask you, obviously, I mean, what is the future of Twitter? What do you think is the path for it ahead, and can it stay independent?
Not really at liberty to talk about Twitter as a board member.
But just from a strategy perspective, I mean, you've talked about live video being big. I mean, is live video the future of Twitter?
It's the live video stuff is pretty cool. I think it's exciting. We'll see where it goes. I don't think it's the only future. There's lots of good stuff to do.
AR, VR?
What's that?
AR, VR? I mean, is that...
I like AR.
You like AR and VR? Twitter likes AR and
My
VR?
venture firm, Obvious Ventures, invested in Magic Leap. That's a very fun company.
Okay.
See, I'm trying to change the subject.
You know, I know you are too. You're lucky. I could ask so many other questions about Twitter too, but I mean, just for the people, a lot of people here are very, very interested in the company. What should they be excited about? And then I will move on, but you have to answer.
What should they be excited about?
Yeah, about Twitter in particular.
Well, I mean, it's the thing that I think is just most misunderstood about Twitter and state today is Twitter is bigger than it's ever been, and it's growing. And that's public information, and everybody has this opposite perception, like it's dead and it's shrinking.
Why do you think people have that perception? Because the
Media?
media, yeah. Okay. I'll agree with you on that. But I mean, user growth has been not skyrocketing. I mean, inching, maybe.
The fact remains it's bigger than it's ever been, and
Yes,
it's growing.
that's
so,
true.
you know, and the vast majority of apps and new things aren't, you know, don't grow and are, you know, don't get off the ground. It's still one of the biggest things, and it's growing, and that's pretty good. So we don't need to get like, you know, start being overly concerned about it. I mean, there's business challenges, obviously, and there's very, very high expectations of Twitter, which I share, but there's room to do a lot of stuff.
Do you use Snapchat? What do you think of Snapchat?
I've played with Snapchat quite a bit. I think it's super cool. I think the product design is brilliant. I have a lot of friends who use Snapchat. It doesn't maintain my interest that much, either the stories or the Discover. I think it's just very well done. I get kind of bored with the content.
Do you think that's a function of...
I'm old.
No. Well, I was going to put it a little differently, but I sort of wonder if it's like just a function of I often feel like you do, even though I use it on and off. A function of our networks not being on it, or do you think, you know, if you talk to those guys, they think they've cracked this product ingenuity that appeals to other people, right?
I think the age thing is, I'm joking about that because I actually, for years, I would run into people who's like, no, I don't use Twitter, I'm too old. Obviously, Twitter is a news product primarily, and who reads news? Old people. So
young people read the information too. But.
Yeah, smart young people and smart old people read news. And people who are doing stuff in the world and care about what's going on in the world. That's primarily what Twitter is. Twitter is a subset of Twitter activity is social. And actually a ton of teens use Twitter in social ways, and I'm sure a ton read news on it as well. But the primary, I think it's a personality thing because I always saw Twitter as an information service, not a social network. And a lot of the way we shaped it over time, you make choices about what to optimize for, was optimized for a news network. And that's why it works really well for that. Snapchat has the content piece, but obviously the super addictive thing is the highly, highly social thing.
Yeah.
I'm just not, I have friends my age who do that all day long, and I don't do that. I've never done that. I've never really like participated in these networks for just to have the social element. Maybe I just don't like people enough, but it's, I think that's just a personality thing,
Yeah.
and it's not right or wrong.
That's a good point. I'm always surprised how active messaging on Snapchat is for a lot of people versus Discover and the way that power users use both. And
Yeah.
I find that kind of intimidating, the volume of messaging. But, so back to Medium. I mean, you're one of these huge, valued, very, very highly private tech companies. You guys have raised 130 million, maybe?
Sounds
On that
about right,
ballpark?
yeah.
Cool. So when you look at the future, is it more private fundraising? Is it IPO? I mean, broadly, what do you see as the sort of financing paths at your stage of size and growth?
Fortunately, we're in a good point. We raised the second chunk opportunistically, to tell you the truth, because as you know, the market was fluctuating late last year, or early this year. We said, well, let's put more money in the bank. We had a lot of interest. We had a good valuation, and we thought we're on a great path, but we could go out to raise in a year, which would be the normal course, and because the market would be at the same valuation, so let's put it in the bank. Because we had passed the point, I don't think that's always a good strategy, but we were past the point where we were going to look for an early exit or anything. So we have a lot of money in the bank. I think we probably won't get to profitability with the money in the bank, so we have a lot to do in the next, say, 18 months or 2 years, which we could probably easily last to. We have to see how revenue ramps up, and then we'll probably do another late stage round at that point. That would be like the default path. Longer term, who's to say? What I'm excited about the opportunities opening up for financing at the later stage. And like
Do you mean
Fred,
with hedge funds and
well,
private
no,
equity firms,
more
or-
like Fred Wilson had a great post a while back about how public and private markets are blurring, and that comes from public investors investing in private companies, and adjusting the valuations in a public way, which is a thing you didn't have to put up with until you were public before.
Which is really how I think they're just trying to get everyone to go public.
It
By being like,
maybe.
we're going to price you whether or not you like it.
Yeah, another company I'm really excited about that's an obvious ventures investment is Long-Term Stock Exchange,
Yeah.
Eric Ries's company. And so who knows where that will go. I think Medium, maybe timing will align once they're ready and when we're ready, but that's one fantasy that I've
And for
enjoyed.
those of you who aren't familiar, I mean, it's basically an exchange where you can float some shares publicly, but still maintain a lot of control and pick your have a longer term shareholders.
Yeah, I don't know all the rules, but the goal of it is basically to create a public stock market that has the benefits of public stock market, where there's rules that take out shorter term incentives.
Yeah.
And so if it works, it will allow companies to be public without a lot of the downsides of being public in terms of being pressured for the short term versus long term.
Great. Yeah. Excellent. Well, I think we have time for maybe one or two questions. If anyone wants to step up to the mic and just say your name and fire away. I know you guys have good questions, so.
Can you do it without the mic?
Yes, I'll repeat it just in case.
It's more like a comment. I think if I look at a car crash, I actually want to see another car crash. And that's one thing actually about Twitter that sort of bums me out is if I follow you a bunch or look at a bunch of your tweets, or it'd be really awesome if you automatically showed me more of you for a while.
Interesting. All right, you can see more of my tweets.
Yeah, but without having to work at it.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so is that something that, how do I turn that into a question?
Well, it's sort of this question of sort of algorithmically, right,
Yeah,
which Twitter's begun to do in ranking.
Listen to me and what I like, and then give me more of it.
Do you think that would be good for Twitter?
Well, it's actually happening and that's how that's how Facebook's worked for a long time, and it's how Twitter actually works now. The Twitter feed is now algorithmic, as is the Instagram feed. All these feeds are algorithmic because, as is the Medium feed, because it does exactly what you're saying. It may not be obvious that that's what it's doing, but it's reacting. They're all reacting to what you're clicking on and watching, and Twitter has gone into that very carefully and subtly, because the other side of that is I don't want to lose control. And if some people feel very differently. If I look at a car crash, don't show me more car crashes. And what's really, really tricky about all these systems is you want to minimize the work that people have to do to get stuff they want. But if you take it completely out of their control, I feel like the feeds are sort of like TV, and there's no intentionality. Old TV, where you turn on the TV and say, show me what's on, you start flipping channels, and you stop at something and you consume it for a while. The difference is the TV learns from what you stop at, so it shows you more of that stuff, which sounds great, except for, there's no intentionality to that, and that does, it catches you at a bad moment, and it's like putting junk food out in front of you all day long. Do you really want that? I would prefer, no, let's keep that away. I have access to it if I want it. I'll go and...
It's temptation.
It's not good for our brains, and it doesn't lead to the best outcomes if we only appeal to base instincts and what people react to all the time. And so TV, by the way, has gotten way better when we move out of the feed, when it's no longer turning on and flipping channels, when it's intentional, and you open up Netflix or your DVR and you choose from your carefully curated list of shows. And everything about that has been better for consumers and the business and the quality of content. And so I think there's something beyond the feed that is going to be much better. That'll still give you the opportunity to explore and offer suggestions and learn from what you want, but not take the control completely out of your hands.
What is that?
We're working on it.
Channels? I think it might be. I just think channels are an interesting metaphor for that. You have some
It
choice,
is.
but some passive.
It is. I think we'll be in a beyond the feed world in a few years, and that's definitely something we're thinking about a lot at Medium.
Awesome. Great. Well, Ev, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks.